Thank you so much for waiting to hear me and not going straight to the bar. I know that's incredibly tempting. And also, apologies for the awful 1980s graphic on the right of the globe. That's not nice. We're trying to get rid of that. So yeah, I'm Anthony Trigo. I'm going to give you a quick overview of what I'm going to talk about. So the first thing is a little story, because I quite like storytelling. Doesn't mean I'm good at it, but I quite like to do it. Then a brief introduction of who is Fleetcor, a bit about us, what we do, and then the kind of digital transformation journey that we've just started to kind of kick off. We're about halfway through it, if that's such a thing, particularly in response to social media in recruitment. So firstly, I want to tell a quick story. So for all of May, I was really lucky to be in the US for work. I was in Atlanta, which is where our Fleetcor HQ is, and Nashville as well, which is where we've got another office. And for my first 2 weeks, I was in Atlanta, and I booked a hotel, and I won't say which one it was, but it was slightly at the kind of mid-range of pricing, and they really heavily marketed their breakfast as something to really shout about. And the rooms looked kind of clean enough, and they were close enough to the office, and I thought, wow, if food's involved and it's decent, I can pretty much sleep through anything. It's pretty good. So I left Bath, which is where I'm from. I got to Heathrow, flew to Atlanta, picked up a rental, drove an hour, and I realized that the image didn't exactly match the reality of kind of what I saw there. So after a long day of traveling, I arrived to a completely unengaged guy behind the desk. He didn't even say hello, he just asked for extra money. But it's okay, I thought, because the breakfast is going to be great. So I get to the room and I see two double beds. One's got dirty footprints on, and the other has a red stain over 2/3 of it, which is weird. And I thought, that's okay, because the breakfast is going to be good. And then the aircon doesn't work, and it's about 38 degrees in Atlanta. But again, I thought, breakfast, don't worry about it, it's going to be fantastic. And the fridge freezer is so loud that you can barely sleep. But I figured, the breakfast, it's going to be good. So after sleeping on the third of the bed that didn't have some kind of weird stain on it, I get up really optimistic. I walk down the incredibly stale-smelling corridor and down to the stairs to see a big sign saying breakfast buffet, and an arrow pointing just to the left, kind of down. It's slightly fallen off its hinge. And I walk in, and this is what I get. So it's a piece of fruit toast wrapped in cling film, one piece of fruit wrapped in cling film, and a polystyrene cup where my options were apple or orange, both of which had a kind of film of their own on the top of it. I was disappointed to say the least, and luckily I moved to another hotel the very next day. But the reason I tell you this story is that the idea of image and reality and authenticity and building trust, creating amazing experiences is such a critical part of everything we do. And I think it's touched on every talk that's been going on today. So it's just worth keeping in mind as we kind of go through this PowerPoint. So who am I? I'm a digital marketing consultant. These are a bunch of people I've worked with. But the real thing is, I'm sorry, I'm not a recruiter. I don't do recruitment. I'm sorry. I'm more of a marketeer than a recruitment consultant or an agency or anything like that. But what I am really interested in is digital technology, driving capability change, training people up on how they can use technology in ways that's going to help them optimize their performance and things like that. So Fleetcor hired me to look at how they could do things a bit differently and where digital technology could help improve things. So who is Fleetcor? Some nice pictures. So we're a relatively big business. We've got over 7,000 employees globally. We operate in 53 countries. We've got 24 offices globally. It's a Fortune 1000 company recently. And it's grown over the last 17 years, mainly through acquisitions of about 70 businesses worldwide and organic growth. So that's the kind of official party line. And for me, it's more of a collection of people that really enjoy what they do, and they're as a payments provider. And that they really make the most of a business that's kind of corporate in size, but it's a kind of a startup in nature, which of course has a whole bunch of problems, but overall it's a really exciting company to be in as it grows. So why am I here? So one big area the business and I felt we can make a real significant impact, specifically through social media and as part of a wider digital transformation journey, was in recruitment. Getting the best people to join and stay in the business was and still is and always will be a key priority, and if we can save some money by becoming less reliant on agencies, then even better. And the reason I put "Are we there yet?" in the title is that in some cases it took a lot more education than I thought it would do, particularly to the wider business, that improving things like our social profiles, trying to build a community of potential employees, these kind of things don't happen overnight. But these kind of steps that I've got should help speed it up. And here are a bunch of statistics that show why we did what we did. The two that really scream out for me, one is that nearly 80% of candidates use social during consideration of a role. So they'll be checking your social media when they're applying for a role with you. And the other one, which is kind of more of a statement, which is just that candidates expect more. And I think the fact that everyone's in this room is kind of testament to that we think candidates expect more, they deserve more. And for a business like ours, so we're ranked, weirdly enough, we're ranked by Forbes as one of the most innovative businesses in the world. But before I started, we had nothing in this presence that was consistent to the overall business plan. And again, the image of an innovative business, exciting fintech, but in reality, we're not progressive enough to invest in a positive social footprint. So, a couple of steps here. So, step one is assemble the team. So the first thing I did was assemble a brilliant team to help deliver our new aim of engaging with potential candidates and building our employer brand through social media. What I found is that, and hopefully you can agree with this, is that HR is usually at the crossroads of the whole business. It hears and knows everything, weirdly, often before anybody else does, even within some of their own teams. So these teams here are pictured of all the HR teams in some of our biggest offices globally. And for the first time in 17 years, all of our recruiters globally got on the same call and began to share insight, experiences, and news. That had never happened before, and I'm kind of blown away. So top left is Atlanta, bottom left is Mexico, and we've got the UK one in the middle, Mexico, Brazil, Germany, Russia, they're all on here, and they're all part of this kind of working group to better improve our social footprint. And step two, so we've assembled a brilliant team. This step two was all around agreeing some basic principles. And that was all around kind of shared ownership. It was a big step for us, and everyone agreeing to basically own the channels themselves as part of a wider team. So content could be a blog post, could be a picture, could be a video, anything that really lines up to our employer brand statement. So now I'm looking for content, stories or news. I simply go to the team and I ask for it. And with a bit of training and coaching, generally they're able to give me something really, really good. So for example, if we're having a focus on, say, recognition, which is part of the theme, we just say, look, have you recognized anybody recently? And most people in the businesses, they too tend to do that. Can we get a picture of it? Can you send it over? Can we get the name of the person? What do they win it for? Can we put that online? Are they happy with that? And most of the time, 9 out of 10 times, they're more than happy for their picture to go on social media, particularly if it's to do with recognition. Who doesn't want that? We then reconvene as a group and review what content is working, what's not, what do we need to do more of, do we need to find some additional budget for, say, things like if we're going to do a slicker video or if we want to buy kind of £4 tripod thing from Amazon, which again is a really useful tool. And that's allowed us to work more collaboratively than ever before, really. So step three is around employer brand statement. So this feels very small compared to the other work that other people have been doing. But what I did is I spoke to a lot of people across different locations and seniorities to try and understand kind of Fleetcor's unique vernacular, and I think every business has one. So what's the reality of working here? And it's hard when most companies have similar looking kind of career sites to differentiate ourselves in a highly competitive marketplace. So what I was trying to do was develop a really unique tone of voice that feeds through everything we do. And after a bit of qualitative and quantitative research, I was able to boil it down to a clear theme, which is we're a fast-paced, challenging place to work, which often leads to great innovations, which you'd kind of hope within a payments business. People are also relatively free to shape their role within a global business. They move around, and they can really make an impact. So we regularly have it, bless you. We regularly have it where people will move from the UK to New Zealand, and they'll move from the US to Germany. And people are really free to do that, and it's just about sharing those stories that we weren't before. So I appreciate this is a relatively crude way to look at employer branding, but it was a really good starting point for helping content creators build their content. I've got a couple of extra pictures there. And what we also did with all this content was we started, or we tried to be, incredibly honest in all our conversations about who we are. So if you didn't like the idea of being challenged or working for a place that's incredibly fast-moving, then not in a horrible way, but you might not enjoy working here. And actually, having those really upfront conversations with candidates has helped no end. People go, actually, I read the day in the life of, and it sounds a bit too much for me. I kind of want a bit more stability in how things work. Okay, that's fine. And we might be able to find a role for that. But actually, being really honest has allowed people to really thrive in the business. Step 4 was auditing our digital footprint, which is actually a lot more fun than it sounds. So after a quick audit, we found that we had 10 Twitter profiles, 4 Facebook profiles and growing. We had 2 Instagrams, luckily only 1 LinkedIn, and they all had different owners. So if you search Twitter, LinkedIn, or Facebook for your company name, I'll bet you that you'll find a bunch that have been started by an intern or someone else in sales and completely forgotten about. That's definitely what happened with us. So there was no consistency. Some of them were live, others were dormant, and we discovered really that we hadn't made it easy for candidates to find us. And when 80% of candidates are looking at your social media during consideration of a role with you, that's really bad. So we tried to shut down as many of these as we could, which we've done kind of successfully. So we now try and have one singular view or voice of the truth for Fleetcor on social media. That was quite an important one for us. And also convincing people not to have their own profile, but as the Fleetcor brand was quite a tricky conversation as well. Through talking to our employees and getting some industry insights, we were able to pull together a real rough segmentation model, which gave us some insights around how many people do we have doing certain roles, why do they apply for those roles, where do they find these opportunities, and what kind of content do they want to see. This has been no end in helping our teams create better content that's targeted to the people we're trying to recruit. So this is a very high-level one. We have a more detailed one, which is sales and services make up 50% of our business in the UK, roughly. Through talking to them and having lots of conversations, we found that actually the reasons they applied for a job with us were primarily location, was it near their house, and then salary and benefits and so on. And these were the channels they used to find us. And then we were able to find out from them what's the kind of content they want to see from us. So just having these conversations. What do you want to know about before you apply for a job or during consideration of a role? And they all said these things. I want to know actually what it's like to really work there. I don't just want to see a JD because that doesn't really tell me much about the working environment. Employee profiles, events, office awards, all these kind of staff stories people found really, really useful. And then it was for us then to work out, well, what's the overarching theme for each of these audiences? And again, I would go into even more detail. So middle management, that's a huge pool of people, and actually you can get into much more kind of, well, actually, is it a very technical role? Because they're going to want to see much more different things than, say, someone in sales. And then step 6, so we created what we call a thematic social calendar. So for example, this isn't the one we're using, but it's a great example of September. We said, right, we want to be focusing on innovation. We're a payments company. We were recently awarded we're in top 25 most innovative businesses. We should be leveraging that more. So let's find lots of content from people around the business and what channels and mechanisms we're going to use to get that message out to people. And again, HR really are at the kind of crossroads of the business. So they know the products that are going on. They know they're going to be hiring someone. Why are we going to be hiring them? Why are they going to be working on these new products? Okay, so we can talk about those products before they get launched. So how is it going? It's going pretty well, actually. In terms of engagement, we've got really high internal and external engagement with our original content that we're creating. We've got increased followers across our main channels. In terms of applications, the proportion of our applications via social media went from 0.8% in March 2016 to 19% of all our applications in March 2017. And that was just through a couple of months of really focused, targeted content we put out. And it remains pretty high, around the kind of 18 to 20% mark every month. Oh, and retention, sorry. Retention as well. So this is a really interesting one. We did a lot of work with LinkedIn, and they found that you're more likely to stay with us as a business when they see your content before they go on to apply. So again, it all comes back to they want to know more about what's actually like to be in the business. And once I know that information, actually, it's not so much of a surprise for me if I go in there and it's not what I expected. Again, this whole image versus reality. We're being openly very real and giving a real image of what the business is like to work in. And they seem to appreciate that because they're staying for longer. And what's next for us? So chatbots, funnily enough, we're working on building a chatbot. We still are going to keep the human in our, I love the idea of the concierge, I thought it was fantastic. We're going to keep the human part of it, but also where it's possible, we are working on developing a chatbot, particularly for internal engagement purposes. The other one is around predictive analytics. So a big part of our role is around how we use data better. So how can we use data modeling to understand, predict, and preempt employee behaviors? And digital skill sets. So I trained the European HR team on digital that's impacting HR, how we can prepare for it, and what we can change now to be ready for it. So in summary, assemble a great team, because God, I would really struggle to be able to try and do this by myself. It's nearly impossible. And agree some basic principles with them in terms of ownership and boundaries between the businesses. Number 3 was, find the voice of your brand by talking to all levels of the business. I was quite surprised, actually, that when I was talking to the senior hires versus kind of like sales and services, they all had exactly the same kind of impression of the business. It was fast-moving, it was challenging, etc., which is really good. It's great, something really good to be able to build on. Audit your current digital footprint. Do a high-level segmentation of your audience, your target candidates, and create a thematic calendar so that everyone's got something, an umbrella level to be driving towards. And that is my presentation. Thanks very much.